The divorce papers were sitting on my kitchen counter when I got home that Thursday evening. I stood there staring at them for a long time. My hands were completely still. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't angry. And I wasn't sad. I was calm. And that calm scared me more than anything else, because I knew exactly what it meant. It meant I had already seen this coming. It meant I had already done something about it. And it meant that my wife, the woman who had spent 3 years carefully dismantling my life, had just made the biggest mistake of hers. I picked up the papers, set them back down, and made myself a cup of coffee. Then I pulled out my phone and called my attorney. He answered on the second ring. I said, "She filed." He was quiet for just a second. Then he said, "Good, we're ready. I need to take you back about 4 years, because none of this makes sense without the beginning. My name is Daniel. I'm a civil engineer. I'm not flashy. I don't drive a fancy car, and I've never been the kind of guy who walks into a room and turns heads. I built my money quietly over about 12 years through smart investments, a small construction company I co-founded with my college roommate, and genuinely boring discipline. By the time I was 38, I had a comfortable life, a nice house, solid savings, a business that ran well. I wasn't rich in a private jet kind of way, but I was stable in a way that took real work to build. I met Vanessa at a charity dinner my company sponsored. She was stunning, not just beautiful, but the kind of person who made everyone in the room feel like she was only looking at them. She laughed easily. She asked questions that felt genuine, and she remembered every single detail I told her. On our second date, she mentioned offhand that she'd been burned badly in a previous relationship, that she was just looking for something real and honest. I remember thinking she seemed almost too good to be true. I pushed that thought away. That was my first mistake. We dated for about 8 months before she brought up moving in together. 6 months after that, she brought up marriage. I was cautious. My business partner, a guy named Ray, who'd known me since college, sat me down before the engagement and said, "Danny, something feels off about her. I can't explain it. Just slow down." I told him he was being protective and that I was fine. That was my second mistake. We got married on a Saturday in October. It was a beautiful wedding. Her family was warm and kind. Everything felt right. And for about the first year, things actually were right, or at least they felt that way. The first red flag came about 14 months into the marriage. I noticed a charge on our joint account for almost $3,000 to a travel agency. I asked Vanessa about it, and she said it was a girls' trip she'd planned with 2 friends, something she'd mentioned to me weeks earlier. I didn't remember her mentioning it, but I told myself I was busy, that I must have forgotten. I let it go. 2 months later, I found a receipt in the laundry for a piece of jewelry I'd never seen her wear. It was almost $2,000. When I brought it up, she said she'd bought it as a gift for her sister's birthday. I asked why it was so expensive for a birthday gift, and she got quiet and then emotional, saying she felt like I was accusing her of something and that she couldn't believe I didn't trust her. The conversation ended with me apologizing. I still don't know how that happened. By month 18 of our marriage, I started noticing a pattern. There would be a charge I didn't recognize. I would ask about it. She would have an answer. That was almost right, but not quite. And then somehow the conversation would flip and I'd end up feeling guilty for asking. It happened so consistently that I started questioning my own memory. I started wondering if I was being too suspicious, too controlling, too focused on money. Ray saw it differently. He called me one evening and said, "Have you actually looked at your accounts lately, Danny? Like really looked?" I told him I checked them regularly. He asked me to pull up the last 6 months and actually sit with them. That night, I did. What I found made me sit very still for a very long time. Over 18 months, more than $60,000 had moved out of our joint accounts in ways I couldn't fully account for. Some of it was in charges I'd been given explanations for. A lot of it wasn't. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I told myself I was misreading the numbers. But something had shifted in me that night. Something quiet and cold settled in my chest. And I stopped ignoring it. The moment everything became undeniable happened on a Wednesday afternoon when I came home from a site visit 2 hours earlier than expected. Vanessa didn't hear me come in. I could hear her on the phone in the bedroom. Her voice low and fast, the way people talk when they're trying not to be overheard. I stood in the hallway outside the bedroom door, and I listened. She was talking to someone about a transfer, a specific number. She used the words, "before he figures it out in just a few more weeks." And then she laughed at something the other person said. It wasn't an evil laugh, it was casual, like she was discussing a grocery list, like I was just an inconvenience to be managed, like 3 years of my life meant absolutely nothing. I walked back out the front door as quietly as I'd come in. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes. Then I drove to Ray's office. I told him everything. He didn't say a word until I finished. Then he said, "Okay, now we handle this the right way." He had a name and number in his hand before I left his office. His family attorney, a woman named Patricia Chen, who Ray said was one of the sharpest people he'd ever met. I called her that same evening. We met the following morning. Patricia laid everything out clearly and calmly. She explained what Vanessa had likely been doing, which was a systematic financial drain before filing for divorce, so she could claim her own financial contributions and walk away with as much as possible. Patricia said it was more common than people thought. She also said we had a window, a small but very real one, to restructure things legally before Vanessa made her move. Over the next 2 weeks, I did exactly what Patricia told me to do. We separated my business assets from personal accounts in a way that was completely legal and fully documented. We reviewed every transfer from the joint accounts and built a clear paper trail showing the pattern of withdrawals. Patricia filed a financial disclosure motion that would require Vanessa to account for every dollar that had moved, and we gathered everything quietly, calmly, and completely without Vanessa knowing any of it was happening. 2 weeks after that first meeting with Patricia, I came home to the divorce papers on my counter. The confrontation happened 4 days later. Vanessa came to collect some of her things, and I asked her to sit down. She looked confident. She had the look of someone who believed they were several steps ahead. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and crossed her arms and waited. I said, "I know what you've been doing, Vanessa." She said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Daniel." I put a folder on the table between us. She looked at it, but didn't open it. I said, "Every transfer, every charge, every account." You thought I wasn't watching. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You can't prove anything." I said, "Patricia Chen already has." Something changed in her face then. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was the specific look of someone who has just realized the plan they thought was perfect has a very large hole in it. She stood up and said she needed to call her attorney. I told her that was a great idea. She left without taking anything. Her attorney called Patricia the next morning. The months that followed were not easy. I won't pretend they were. Even when you see something coming, even when you've prepared for it, there's still a kind of grief that comes with the end of a marriage, because somewhere in those 3 years there were real moments. There were Sunday mornings and good conversations and times I genuinely believed we were building something. Realizing those moments had been a performance, its own kind of loss. You don't just lose the marriage, you lose your own memory of it. Vanessa's family reached out to me twice, both times asking if I could be more flexible in the settlement. I had a lot of compassion for them because I don't think they knew who she was, but I also stayed firm. Patricia had built an airtight case showing the pattern of financial manipulation, and Vanessa's attorney knew it. The settlement reflected that. Vanessa walked away with significantly less than she'd planned for. The money she'd moved was traced and accounted for in the proceedings. She was also required to pay a portion of my legal fees. Ray came over the night the settlement was finalized. He brought a bottle of something expensive and glasses. He didn't make a speech. He just poured and handed me a glass. That was enough. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I came out of it completely fine. I came out of it changed, which isn't the same thing, but in some ways it's better. I'm more careful now, not in a closed-off way, but in a way that respects my own instincts. When something feels wrong, I don't talk myself out of it anymore. I don't apologize for asking questions. I don't confuse someone's emotional reaction with proof that I'm wrong. My company is doing well. Ray and I just signed a contract for the biggest project we've ever taken on. I bought a smaller house and it feels more like mine than the old one ever did, because every single thing in it I chose for myself. I have a dog now, a big ridiculous golden retriever named Frank who has absolutely no agenda and is very honest about what he wants, which is mostly treats and a spot on the couch. I'm not bitter. I tried bitterness for about 2 weeks after the settlement and it was exhausting and boring, and I let it go. What I am is clear. Clear about what I built, clear about what I almost lost, and clear about the fact that the best decision I ever made wasn't hiring Patricia or restructuring my assets or any of the strategic moves that protected me. The best decision I ever made was listening to Ray that night when he asked me to really look at my own life, because looking clearly at something, even when it's painful, is always better than looking away. And when you finally see something for what it is, you stop being a victim of it. You become the one who was ready. If you like the video, then please subscribe to my channel.